She frowned. She had locked it herself. As she approached, the light inside flickered. A shadow moved across the curtains, tall, deliberate, familiar. She froze. Then the curtain shifted, and for one heart-stopping moment she saw a silhouette she knew too well. Thomas, her late husband. Eleanor stood in the rain, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The silhouette in the study window had vanished, gone as quickly as it had appeared. For several long seconds she could not move. Her mind warred between terror and the wild, impossible hope that grief had conjured the vision. But she had seen it. The height, the stance, even the way his shoulder had tilted slightly, a habit Thomas always had when he read by lamplight. Her voice came out in a whisper that broke on the wind. Thomas, no answer. Only the sound of rain hissing against stone. Gathering her skirts, she hurried up the steps and through the front doors. The house was utterly silent, save for the faint ticking of the clock in the hall. The air smelled faintly of smoke and candle wax, as though someone had been in the study only moments ago. She forced herself to move, each step echoing against the marble floor. Her hand trembled as she reached for the study door handle. It was cold, colder than it should have been. The door creaked open. The fire in the grate burned low, throwing long shadows across the bookshelves. The chair, his chair, stood turned slightly toward the window. And there on the desk lay something that hadn't been there before, a pocket watch. Her husband's pocket watch. She knew it instantly, the ornate silver case engraved with his initials, T.G., and the faint scratch near the hinge from when it had once fallen onto the hearth. He had worn it every day of their marriage. It had been buried with him. Eleanor's breath hitched. No. Her hands shook as she reached for it. The metal was warm to the touch, freshly handled. She turned it over. Inside, the clock still ticked, but instead of the soft chime she remembered, it emitted a faint mechanical click, a different rhythm entirely. And then she noticed a small piece of folded paper tucked beneath the inner lid. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. Do not trust him. That was all it said. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She turned sharply toward the door, half expecting to see Samuel Blythe standing there, but the doorway was empty. Do not trust him, she whispered. Who? The question barely left her lips when a floorboard creaked behind her. She spun around. At first she saw nothing, only shadows shifting with the dying firelight. But then, from the far corner of the room, a figure stepped forward. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, the outline of his coat dark against the glow. For a moment Eleanor could not breathe. Thomas? The figure stopped. Rainwater dripped from his sleeve, pattering softly against the rug. Slowly he raised his head. It was him. Or at least it looked like him. His face was pale, drawn, eyes hollow, as though he hadn't slept in days. But those eyes, she would have known them anywhere. Her candle nearly slipped from her hand. How can this be? He spoke at last, his voice hoarse, real. You shouldn't have looked for me, Eleanor. She stumbled back. You're alive, he shook his head. Not in the way you think. The words chilled her to the bone. What do you mean? She demanded. They said you. They were meant to. He stepped closer, his expression strained. It was the only way to keep you safe. Her pulse raced. Safe from whom? He hesitated, glancing toward the window, as though expecting someone. From Blythe. Eleanor froze. Samuel? Thomas's jaw tightened. He's not who he says he is. She stared at him in disbelief. He told me everything about the smuggling, the network. Yes, Thomas interrupted, his voice rising. Because he led them. The fire popped, sending sparks across the hearth. Her thoughts spun wildly. Samuel, the man who had claimed to protect her, who had burned the letters, who had said her husband died for her. He saved me, she whispered. Thomas's eyes darkened. No, he killed the wrong man. The room fell silent. She shook her head slowly, stepping back until her shoulders touched the wall. That's not true. I saw your body. You saw what they wanted you to see, he said bitterly. A man in my clothes, my ring, my name on a forged note. And Blythe made sure you believed every word of it. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might collapse. Then why come back now? Because, he said quietly, they know you have something they want, and they'll stop at nothing to take it. She frowned. I don't have anything. Thomas's gaze dropped to the pocket watch still clutched in her hand. Yes, you do. Before she could speak, a sudden sound split the silence, glass shattering somewhere in the house. Both their heads snapped toward the door. Thomas moved first. They're here. Who? Blythe's men. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward the back of the study. Behind the heavy curtains, a narrow passage led into the servants' corridors, one even she had never known existed. Go, he urged. Now, but she hesitated, staring at him, this ghost of a man she had mourned, buried, and somehow found again. Come with me. His expression softened with pain. I can't, Thomas. He pressed something into her palm, a small brass key. Find the ledger in the cellar. It will tell you everything. Now run. Another crash echoed through the hall, closer this time. Eleanor turned and fled down the narrow passage, her candle flickering wildly as she ran. Behind her, she heard the study door burst open, men shouting, then a single gunshot that shattered the silence. She stumbled, her candle extinguishing as she fell to her knees in the dark. Her hand trembled around the key. Somewhere behind her, the shouts faded, and in their place, silence. When dawn came, Grey Manor stood eerily still once more. No sign of intruders, no trace of Thomas. Only the faint smell of smoke lingering in the study, and a single footprint on the rug, wet and unmistakably real. Eleanor hadn't slept. She sat in the dim light of dawn, the brass key resting in her palm like a secret that refused to speak. The fire in the study had long since died, leaving behind only a faint smell of smoke, and the memory of a voice she never thought she'd hear again. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, Thomas, the damp hair clinging to his brow, the way his voice trembled when he said they were meant to. And then that gunshot. She had run until her legs gave way, hiding behind the old chapel ruins until the house fell silent again. Now, as the morning light seeped through the rain-streaked windows, the world outside looked calm, deceitfully so. She rose and slipped the key into her pocket. The ledger in the cellar. The manor's lower floors had been sealed off for years. After Thomas's supposed death, she had avoided that part of the house entirely. But if what he said was true, if Samuel Blythe was not her savior, but her husband's betrayer, then the answers lay below. The cellar door groaned when she pried it open. The air inside was cool, heavy with the scent of damp stone and dust. A narrow staircase descended into the dark, its edges uneven from years of neglect. She lit a candle and began her descent. The deeper she went, the more she felt it. A presence. the kind that presses against your skin without ever being seen. At the bottom, rows of old barrels and crates stood stacked to the ceiling. Cobwebs clung, too, the rafters like ghosts of time. She moved carefully, scanning the walls until she saw it, a heavy iron lock fixed to a smaller door in the far corner. Her heart quickened. She took out the brass key. It slid in perfectly. With a click, the lock gave way. Inside was a narrow room lined with ledgers, maps, and stacks of sealed envelopes. The faint scent of ink still clung to them, though many were decades old. She picked up one of the books at random, trade records, shipments, coded symbols she couldn't decipher. Then she found it, a small black ledger, newer than the rest. Its cover bore a faint embossing, T.G., her breath caught. She opened it. The first pages were ordinary enough, supply records, names of merchants, payments, but halfway through the handwriting changed, sharper, urgent. If anything happens to me, the truth must come out. Blythe was never the Crown's man. He was theirs, the French. Every shipment, every deal, a lie within a lie. Eleanor must never trust him. She turned the page. More notes, locations, initials, coded symbols, and then a name she hadn't seen in years. Clara Harland. She frowned. The name meant nothing to her, yet the entry beneath it chilled her to the bone. Harland's girl is the key. If they find her, all is lost. Eleanor stared at the words, her heart pounding. The candle trembled in her grip. Harland's girl. Mrs. Harland, the housekeeper, and her daughter, Clara, who worked at the manor years ago before leaving suddenly. Eleanor had thought little of it then. She turned another page and froze. A loose photograph fell out, landing face down on the dirt floor. She bent to pick it up and nearly dropped it again when she saw what it was. A young woman, fair-haired, smiling faintly, standing beside Thomas, and behind them, Samuel Blythe. They all looked younger, happier, but something in Blythe's gaze unsettled her. Not friendship, possession. Her hands shook. She flipped the photograph over. In neat handwriting, one line was scrawled across the back. The beginning of it all, Waverly Harbor, 1879. Before she could take another breath, a sound echoed behind her, the faint creak of the cellar stairs. Eleanor blew out her candle and pressed herself into the shadows. Footsteps descended slowly, unhurried, as though whoever it was knew she was there. Then a voice, smooth and calm. "Eleanor, you shouldn't be down here, Samuel Blythe." Her blood ran cold. She stepped back, clutching the ledger to her chest. "You lied to me," she whispered. His figure appeared in the dim light, immaculate as ever, though his expression was colder now, stripped of pretense. "You weren't meant to find that. You killed him," she said, trembling. "You killed Thomas." He tilted his head slightly. "I saved you from him." The words struck her like a slap. "Saved me?" Samuel sighed, almost pitying. "You think Thomas was innocent? You think the man you married didn't trade lives for gold? He was working both sides, and when I found out, I ended it. That's not true. Then why did he hide this from you?" He pointed toward the ledger. "Read the last page, Eleanor." "Go on." Her fingers hesitated, then turned to the end. The final entry was dated just days before Thomas's death. "She must never know. If the truth reaches her, they'll use her against me. God forgive me for what I've done." Tears blurred her vision. "What truth?" Samuel stepped closer. "That he wasn't the man you think he was. He didn't die for love or loyalty. He died to keep his sins buried. Her back hit the stone wall. You're lying. He smiled faintly. Am I? And before she could move, he took a step closer and whispered, Then why do you think I let you live? The words froze her blood. In that instant she understood. Thomas's warning, the pocket watch, the key, everything led to this. The candle flickered back to life as if stirred by some unseen force, and in that moment she saw it. Behind Samuel, near the open doorway, a faint shadow moved. Someone else was in the cellar. The flickering candlelight trembled, casting long shapes on the cellar walls. Eleanor's breath came fast, her pulse hammering in her ears. Samuel Blythe stood before her, calm as ever, while behind him that faint movement in the shadows grew clearer, deliberate, human. Samuel hadn't noticed yet. His attention was fixed entirely on her. "Give me the ledger," he said quietly, almost coaxingly. "You don't understand what's at stake, Eleanor. That book has destroyed better men than Thomas." She shook her head, gripping it tighter. "No, I've seen enough." "Then you've seen too much," he murmured. He reached inside his coat, and she knew that gesture. She had seen soldiers do it, years ago during the war. The slow reach for a pistol. Before he could draw it, a voice echoed from the dark. "Don't." Samuel froze. Eleanor's heart stopped. That voice she'd thought she'd lost again. From the shadows stepped Thomas. Alive, real, his coat torn, his face pale, a thin streak of dried blood along his temple. But his eyes, those unmistakable eyes, were sharp with fury. "Step away from her, Blythe," he said. Samuel let out a soft laugh. "Ah, the ghost returns." "You should have stayed buried," Thomas said coldly. Eleanor could barely speak. Thomas. He didn't look at her, not yet. His gaze remained locked on Blythe. "Put it down." Samuel smiled thinly. "You've come back to die twice, then?" He pulled the gun fully free. The metallic click echoed through the stone chamber. Eleanor gasped, stepping forward instinctively, but Thomas raised a hand. "No, stay back." For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. The three of them stood locked in a triangle of silence and flame. Then Thomas spoke again, lower now. "You told her, didn't you, that I betrayed her? That I was working both sides?" Samuel's smile didn't waver. "I told her the truth. You made yourself a hero in her eyes, but you were a smuggler, Thomas. A liar. You brought the enemy to our shores under the guise of trade." "That's rich," Thomas said, "coming from the man who funded it all." The air between them tightened. Eleanor looked from one to the other, her mind reeling. "What are you saying?" Thomas finally looked at her. His expression softened, regret, exhaustion, love all tangled in his gaze. "It was never about me, Eleanor. It was always about him. Blythe ran the jaw network. I was trying to expose it. The ledger you're holding, it's proof. Every name, every shipment, every betrayal." Blythe's voice hardened. "And you think anyone will believe you? You faked your own death, Thomas. You let her mourn you. You let her think you were gone." Thomas's voice broke slightly. "To keep her alive." He turned to Eleanor now, fully, his eyes shining with pain. "They threatened you, Nora. They said if I didn't deliver the names, they'd come for you. So I disappeared. I had to. But I left the truth behind, the watch, the key, so you'd find it if anything ever happened to me." Her throat tightened. "And when you came back last night, I just learned Blythe was moving against you. I couldn't stay hidden any longer. Blythe's patience snapped. Enough of this. He raised the gun. Eleanor screamed, but before the shot rang out, Thomas lunged. The two men crashed into each other, the gun clattering to the floor. The candle toppled, its flame licking across the old wooden ledgers. "Thomas!" she cried, rushing forward. The fire caught fast, the room filling with smoke and the acrid stench of burning paper. The men struggled, grunting, fists slamming into flesh and stone. Blythe's hand found the pistol again. He swung it up, but Eleanor moved without thinking. She grabbed a fallen iron rod from the corner and struck. The sound was sickening. Blythe collapsed, motionless. For a moment, the only sound was their ragged breathing and the crackle of fire. Thomas caught her arm. "We have to go." She stared down at Blythe's still form, trembling. "Did I?" "No time," he said firmly. He grabbed the ledger, half-burned, pages curling in the heat, and pulled her toward the stairs. They burst into the open air as smoke poured from the cellar. Rain began to fall again, soft, but steady, hissing as it hit the flames below. Only when they reached the edge of the garden did Eleanor collapse, sobbing. Thomas knelt beside her, the rain running down his face like tears. "It's over," he said quietly. But she shook her head. "It'll never be over, will it? The lies, the secrets." He reached for her hand. "No more lies. Not between us." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since that terrible night, she saw the man she had loved, worn and haunted, but still hers. "You shouldn't have come back," she whispered. "I had to," he said simply. "Because even after everything, I never stopped loving you." She closed her eyes. "And her?" He hesitated, just long enough to tell her what she already knew. "Clara Harland," she said softly. "She was part of it too, wasn't she?" He nodded. "She helped me disappear. She risked everything." There was no jealousy in Eleanor's eyes now, only sadness and understanding. "You loved her?" "In a way," he admitted, "but not as I loved you. With her, it was survival. With you, it was home." The rain fell harder, washing the soot from his coat, blurring the line between sorrow and redemption. She reached out, brushing his cheek. "Then let's go home." He smiled faintly. "If there's anything left of it." Behind them, Gray Manor burned, a dark silhouette against the gray sky, its secrets finally consuming themselves in flame. And as they walked away, the pocket watch in Eleanor's hand ticked steadily, not with its old rhythm, but a new one. A second chance,